All right, Title 49, CFR Chapter 2, Statute 242, Qualification and Conductor Certification with the Conductor, Subpart B, Program Eligibility Requirement, Certification Program required after the permanent date specified in 242, 105D, and E with each of the railroad shaft certification program approved in accordance with 214, 242, 103, included with the destination for the type of the service with determines ability with the compliance with the criteria established in 242, 107. The procedure evaluating prior safety conduct complied with the criteria established in 242, 109. The procedure evaluating visual hearing the Acuity with the comply with the criteria established in 242-117. The procedure with the training with the comply with the criteria established in 242-119. Procedure with the knowledge testing comply with the criteria established in 242-111 or 12-1. The procedure with the monitoring operation with the performance of the comply with the criteria established in 242-123. 242-103 with approval of the design individual railroad programs by the FRA. Each of the railroads shall submit its written certification program. The request for the approval of the accordance with the procedure with the containment of the pending speed with the part with according with the following schedule. The Class 1 railroad, including the National Railroad Passenger Corporation Class 2 railroad, providing commuter service shall submit with the program no later than September 30th, 2012. The Class 3 with the railroad, including the switching terminal of the railroad, not otherwise classified such as the submit with the program no later than January 31st, 2013. Railroad commencing operation for the pertinent date with the specified in paragraph A with the section shall submit a written certification program required for the approval of the accordance with the procedure with the contained with appendix B with the start with at least 60 days prior to the commencing with the operation. Each of the railroad shall one simultaneously filled with the FRA serve with the copy of the submission with the file with the pursuant the paragraph A with the B with the section submission resubmission file with the paragraph A with the section with the material modification file with the paragraph pursuant with the paragraph 1 of the section on president of each of the labor organization representing the railroad employees subject to this part 2 included in the submission filled with the file pursuant to paragraph A and B with the section of the resubmission of the file with the pursuant with the paragraph H of the section of the material modification file with the pursuant to paragraph I with the section statement affirming the railroad has served with a copy of the president each of the labor organization representing the railroad employees subject to these parts together with listing of the name, the address of the person served, the number, the deed, note. Not later than 45 days after the date of filing submission pursuant with the paragraph A and B with the section, the resubmission with the paragraph the H with this section with material modification pursuant to the paragraph I with this section with the designated with the representative of the railroad employee subject to this department or may comment of the submission, resubmission, material modification each of the comments have shut shall set forth specifically with the basis upon which will be made with the contained with the concise statement with the interest of the commentator with the proceeding. Each of the commentators should be submitted with the associate administrator of the railroad safety chief safety officer of the FRA 1200 New Jersey Avenue Southeast Washington DC 20590. The commentator will serve the complete copy of the comment with serve in the railroad. The submission required for the paragraph A and B with the section shall be stated with the railroad election either the accept the responsibility of the training of the conductors thereby obtain the authority of the railroad to and initially certify the person with as a conductor within the appropriate type of the service to recertify only of the conductor of the previously certified by the other railroads. The railroad elected to accept the responsibility of the training of the conductor shall state its submission with whether the conductor in the training program employed with the training program conducted the same with the other any with the have the adopted ratified with the railroad. The railroad program is considered with approval that may be implemented 30 days after the required filing date with the actual filing date and life of the administrator to notify the railroad in writing the program does not conform with the criteria of the set forth in this part 1. If the administrator determines the program does not conform with the administrator will inform the railroad with specific deficiencies. 2. The administrator informed the railroad with a deficiency more than 30 days after the initial filing of the date of the original program and remain in effect until the 30 days after the approval of the revised program is received, so long as the railroad has complied with the requirements of the paragraph H of the section 8 of the railroad shall submit the program within 30 days after the day of the such notice of the deficiency failure to resubmit the program with the necessary revision will be considered with the failure to implement the program under this part. 1. The administrator will inform the railroad with writing whether the revised the program conform with this part. If the program does not conform with the railroad shall resubmit with the program. 1. The railroad intend with the material modified the program after the receiving initial FRA approval with the description of how it intends to modify the program to conform with the specific requirements for this part at least 60 days after prior to the implementation of such a change. 1. Modification of the material if then would be defective for the program conformance with this part with the modification submission shall contain with the description of the conforms to the pertinent portion of the procedure contained in Appendix B of this part, the modification submission will be handled in accordance with the progress each of the paragraphs G and H of the section through it with no new program. Alright, 242-105, schedule for the implementation. September 1st, 2012, each of the railroads shall in writing designate with the certified conductors as perfect and authorized with the railroads to perform the duty of the conductor January 1st, 2012. issue the certificate with complying with the statute 242-207, each of the person with the designated after for September 1st, 2012, each of the railroad shall, in writing to designate with a certified conductor any of the person to have the authorized with the railroad to perform the duty for the conductor between January 1st and 2012, and then pertinent date of the paragraph D and E with the section of the issue with the certificate that they comply with the statute 242-207, and to each of the person with the designate. C, no railroad shall permit with the required person designated with the certified conductor under the provision of paragraph A and B with the section to perform the service of the certified conductor for more than 36 months of the period beginning with the pertinent date with the compliance with the mandatory procedure with the testing and evaluation set forth in the applicable provision in paragraph D and E with the section left of the person has been certified in accordance with the procedure that complies with the subpart B of the section of this part, except for the provided with the paragraph C3 of the section of the person who has also designated with the certified conductor under the provision paragraph A and B of the section who are eligible to receive the retirement of the dependent person and pension with accordance with the terms of the applicable agreement with the accordance with the terms of the Railroad Retirement Act, Title 45 U.S. Standard Code 231 within 36 months of the pertinent data for the compliance with the mandatory procedure for the testing and evaluation set forth in the applicable provisions over the paragraph D and E with this section may request in writing of the railroad not certify the person pursuant with the subpart B until 36 months after the pertinent date with the compliance with the mandatory procedure for the testing and evaluation set forth in the applicable provision for the paragraph D and E with the section upon the receipt of the written request of paragraph pursuant to paragraph C1 of the section of the railroad may wait with the recertify the person making the request until the end of the 36-month period with the described in paragraph C with the section if the railroad grants any request, it must grant the request to all of the eligible persons to every extent possible. Any person who is subject to the recertification under Part 240 of the chapter may make a request pursuant to paragraph C1 of the section D after December 1st, 2012. No Class 1 railroad, including National Railroad, Passenger Corporation, Class 2 railroad, or railroad providing with a commentary service shall initially certify the recertified person conductor unless the person has been tested and evaluated in accordance with the procedure for the comply with the subpart B of this part issuing the certificate comply with the statute 242-1207. After the April 1st, 2013, no Class 30 railroad, including the switching in the terminal of the other railroad, no otherwise classified with the shall initially certify the recertify the person with the conductor unless the person has been tested and evaluated in accordance with the procedure to comply with the subpart B of this part issued with the certificate that comply with the statute 242-207. And after the applicable dates of the specified in the paragraph D and E of this section, no person shall serve with the conductor with any type of the service that no railroad shall require or permit any person to serve with the conductor any of the type of the services unless the person has been tested and evaluated in accordance with the procedures that comply with the subpart B of this part issued with the certificate comply with the statute 242-207. 242-107. Type of service. Each of the railroad programs shall state with the two types of service: the conductor, passenger conductor, provide with the paragraph B of this section. It will cover that also will railroad will issue certificate either with the following type of with the service: conductor, passenger conductor. See, each railroad shall not reclassify certification with any type of the certified conductor to different type of the conductor certification program during the certification, otherwise very valid, except for the conductor comply with the emergency training identification identified in Part 239 with the chapter as certified with the passenger conductor. Each railroad is authorized to impose additional conditions for the operating of the restriction for the service the conductor may perform beyond the identified section provided with those conditions the restriction is not inconsistent with this part. 242-109. Determination required for the certification recertification. After the pertinent date of the specified in 242-105 D and E with each of the railroad prior to the initial certification recertification, any person for the conductor of the child in accordance with the FRA approved of the program determined the writing the individual meets the eligible requirements 242-111 and 11.3, 11.5, and 403 with the individual meets with the vision with the hearing and acuity stand for the 242-117 vision with the hearing and acuity of the individual necessary for the knowledge demonstrated with the successfully completing with the test the meets with the requirements of 242-121 knowledge for the testing. When a person not previously has been certified that the person with the complete with the training program meets with the requirements of 242-119 of the training, when the evaluation person prior with the safety conductor of the railroad shall not be considered for the information concerning the prior to the conductor, prior to the conducts that occurred prior to the effective of the day of the rule occurred at the time other than that specifically provided within 242-11, 115, and 403 in order to make the determination required for the paragraph 8 of this section of the railroad shall have the only on the file documents pertaining to those determinations. D. A railroad program shall provide a candidate certification or recertification responsibility opportunity to review the comment with the writing in any of the record with the names and information for the concern with any of the person prior to the safety of the conducting initial for the information pertaining to the data required within under paragraph 242, 1 and 11, or 115 for the railroad provided the record contained the information of the cadet and it could be sufficient to render for the person ineligible the certification under the subpart. The opportunity for the comment shall be afforded for the person prior to the railroad and rendering the eligibility decision based on the information any response comment furnished with it shall be retained with the railroad in accordance with the statute 242-203. F. The program shall include the method of the person advised with the railroad that he or she have never been a railroad employee that obtained the license to drive the motor vehicle. Nothing in the section shall be construed with imposing the duty of the requirement that the person have the prior to the railroad employment with the experience to obtain the motor vehicle the driver's license in order to become the certified conductor. G. Nothing in section 242, 111, and 113 shall be constructed to prevent the person subject to this part from entering into an agreement that resolves with the railroad obtaining the information needed for the compliance with the subpart different manner within that prescribed in 242, 111, and 113. 242, 111, and prior safety conduct with a motor vehicle operator. Each railroad should adopt and comply with the program meeting with the requirements of this section when any of the person, including but not limited to each of the railroad officer, supervisor, employee, violates any requirement of the program with comply with the requirements of the section, with the person shall be considered to have violated the requirements of the section, except for the provided in paragraphs D, D, E, and F of the section pertaining to the data specified in statute 242, 105, D, and E. Each of the railroad prior to initial certification, recertification for the person conducting any type of the service shall determine the person meets the eligible requirements for the section. Following prior contact with the motor vehicle operator, the railroad shall initially certify with the person conductor in 60 days of the person requesting information requested in paragraph H of the section lasts at least 60 days prior to the day of the decision of the certified of the person, otherwise meet with the eligibility requirements provided in 242, 109. A railroad shall recertify the person as a conductor within 60 days of the expiration date of the person's certificate is a person. If the person requested information required in the paragraph H of the section with at least 60 days prior to the day of the decision recertification program, otherwise meet the eligibility requirements provided in statute 242, 109, except for the provided in paragraph AF of the section, the railroad with the certified or the recertified person pursuant to paragraph C and D of the section does not obtain the evaluate information required pursuant to paragraph B, H of the section within 60 days of the pertinent dates involved identified in the paragraph C, D of the section, and person will be ineligible to perform this of the conductor will until information can be evaluated. If a person requests information required for the pursuant paragraph H of the section unable to obtain with the person with the railroad certification, recertification for the person may petition with the waiver of the requirements of paragraph B of the section in accordance with this provision. Part 211 of the chapter, the railroad shall certify the recertify for the during the pendency of the waiver of the request for the person otherwise may be eligible to requirements provided in paragraph statute 242, 109. Individual's duty of experience except for the person designated as a conductor under 242, 105, A and B of this person covered in 242, 109, F for each of the persons seek for the certification, recertification of this part within 366 days of the proceeding with the day of the railroad decision on certification, recertification takes an action required with the paragraph H and J of this section with to make the information concerned with his or her driving record available to the railroad. That considering with the certification, recertification, take additional actions, including providing with the necessary with this consent required with the same federal foreign law with the information for the concern that has been driven the railroad record available to the railroad. Each person seek for the certification, recertification of this partial request in writing with the chief of the agency of the driver license agency identified with the paragraph I of the section provided with a copy of the agency's available information concerning with his or her driving record considering the such of the certification, recertification. 1. Each of the person each person shall request the information required with the paragraph H of this section form. 1. The chief of the driver license agency with the jurisdiction includes the state and the foreign country with the last issue of the person with the driver's license, and 2. The chief of the driving license agency and any other jurisdiction, including states and foreign country that issued reissued a person with the driver's license with the preceding 5 years. J. If the driver of the railroad, the driver's license agency informed with the railroad additional information for the concern with the person's driving history with the may exhibit the files of the shade of the agency, foreign country, not previously connected technicals with this section, such as persons shall request the writing of the chief of the driver's license agency was complied with the information provided with a copy of the available information certifying the railroad to take an additional action required with the state, federal law, and foreign law to obtain additional information. K. Any person who never obtained with the motor vehicle driver's license is not going to comply with the provision of the paragraph H of this section shall notify the railroad of that. In fact, of the procedure of the railroad that comply with the statute 242. 109F. Each certified constructor personnel with the seeking initial certification shall report with the motor vehicle incidents prescribed in the paragraph N1 and N2 of this section that comply with the railroad within 48 hours of being converted with the command pole and complete with the state action with the cancel, revoke, suspend, deny the motor vehicle driver license to such violation for the purpose of the paragraph N of the section state with the action with the means of the action of the jurisdiction the issue with the motor vehicle driver the license for including foreign country for the purpose of the conductor certification. No rail shall require the reporting of the earlier than 48 hours after the conviction complete with the state action canceled to revoke and deny with the motor vehicle the license. M. Evaluation record with the evaluation person, the motor vehicle, driving the record, person shall be not concerned with the information concerned with the motor vehicle, the driver's license instance occurred prior to the effective date of the rule more than 36 months before the making in which the railroad is making the certification decision at the time of the other specified, specifically provided in the 242, 11.1, and 11.5, and 11.403. And the railroad shall only consider information concerning with the following with the type of the motor vehicle since in the conviction of the four and complete with the save of the action with the canceled, revocation, suspended, denied the motor vehicle, the driver's license for operating with the motor vehicle while under the influence or impaired with the alcohol, drug, or controlled substance conviction or incomplete with the state action, canceled, revocation, suspended, denied motor vehicle, driver's license, refusal, undergo with the such testing requiring the state and foreign law enforcement officials speaks to determine whether the person is operating a vehicle under the influence of alcohol and controlled substance. If such an instance is identified, the railroad shall provide with the data of the railroad of the DAC together with the information concerning with the dead person, railroad subject to the record, they shall refer to the person with the evaluation, determine if the person has an active substance abuse disorder. The person shall cooperate with the evaluation, shall provide with the requested records for the prior counseling, treating of the review of the exercises with the DAC and contents of the evaluation. 3. If any of the person evaluated not currently affected with the fact of the substance abuse disorder, the subject of the date of the subject shall not be considered further respect for the certification. However, the railroad shall have recommendation with the DAC condition certification upon the participation in the need of the aftercare for the following of the testing alcohol drugs deemed necessary by the DAC consistent with the technical standards of the paragraph statute 242 11.5 F3. If the person is evaluated with the currently affected with the active substance or with the abuse disorder provision in 242 11.5 D will apply. The person will fail to comply with the requirements of paragraph 02 with this section of the person shall be ineligible to perform the conductor in such a time the person complied with the requirements. All right, 242, 113. Prior to the safety conduct with an employee with a different railroad, each railroad shall adopt and comply with the railroad comply with the requirements of the section when any part include but not limited to each of the railroad official with the supervisor employee that violates any of the requirements of the program comply with the requirements of this section. Person shall be considered and violate the requirements of this section after the pertinent data specified in 242, 105 D and E of the railroad may initially certify the recertifying any person that is conducting any type of shall determine that the person meets the eligible requirements of this section. Subject person designated as a conductor with the 242, 105 A and B with the person covered in 242, 109 after each of the person's certification, recertification of this part shall be within 366 days preceding the day of the railroad decision, certification, recertification. Request the rating of the chief of the operating officer for the appropriate person performing the employee of the railroad, provided with a copy of the railroad available the information concerning with his or her service record with the compliant with the non-compliant with the statute 242, 11.111, the 11.5, and 403 with the railroad statute 242 with the concerning with the certification and recertification. Taking additional action with including to provide necessary conveyance consistent with the required state and federal law with the information concerning his or her service record available to do that of the railroad. All right, 242, 11.15. If substance abuse disorder and alcohol drug rules compliance, each of the railroad shall adapt and comply with the program with comply with the requirements of the section with any of the person, but not limited to each of the railroad official, supervisor, employee that violates any of the requirements of the program which comply with the requirements of this section. Person shall consider the violate the requirements of this section after the pertinent data specified in 242, 105 D and E with the reach with the railroad prior to initial certifying and recertifying any of the person conducted with any type of the service that shall determine person meets the eligible requirements of this section. In order to make a determination required for the paragraph D and D of this section, the railroad shall have the file of documents pertaining with the data with determination, including the written documentation from the DAC with the shall state that his or professional opinion with the person of the being evaluated not currently affected with the substance abuse disorder, or that a person have been evaluated affected with the active substance abuse disorder. Fitness requirement that any person within the active substance abuse disorder shall be denied certification, recertification as a conductor, except for the provided with paragraph G of this section. Certified conductor determined to have an active substance abuse disorder shall be ineligible to hold the certification consistent with the provision of this part of the certification may be reinstated as provided in paragraph F of this section. 3. In any case, if the current employee of the railroad evaluated to have an active substance abuse disorder, including the person identified under the paragraph 242, 111, the employee may in otherwise eligibly voluntarily self-refer to the Substance Abuse Council with the treatment under the policy required in 219.403 of the chapter of the railroad shall have to treat the substance abuse evaluation with the confidential except with the respect of the ineligibility of certification. Prior to the alcohol, drug, and drug contact of the federal rule compliance, determination whether the person may remain with the certified conductor of the railroad shall consider for the conduct described in paragraph E of 2 of the strictly covered within the period of the 60 consecutive months for the prior of the review. The review of the certification shall initiate promptly upon the occurrence of the documentation and incident of the conduct with the described paragraph in this paragraph. 2. Rails are considered a violation of the statute 219-101 and 102 of this chapter with a refusal to provide with a breath and body fluid sample of the testing under the requirements of Part 219 of this chapter will be instructed to do so by a railroad representative. A period of ineligibility described in the section shall begin with the first person for a person not currently with the certified with the day of the railroad written determination that most recent incident has occurred. For a person currently certified on the day of the railroad notification to have the person recertification has been denied certification and being revoked. The period of ineligibility described in the section shall be determined in accordance with the following standards. In the case for the single violation of the statute 219-102 with the chapter of the person shall ineligibility to hold the certificate during the evaluation any with required primary treatment is described in paragraph F of this section. In this case, for the 2 violation 219-102 with the chapter of the person shall be ineligible to hold the certificate for the period of 2 years. In the case of more than 2 such violation, the person shall be ineligible to hold the certificate for the period of 5 years. In this case, one of the violation of the 219-102 with the chapter, 1 violation of the 219-101 with the chapter of the person shall be eligible to hold the certificate for the period of 3 years. 3. In the case of the violation of statute 219-101 with the chapter of the person shall be eligible to hold the certificate for the period of 9 months unless the identification of the violation was through a qualifying co-worker report as described in 219-104-405 of the chapter of the conductor with the waive the investigation with the case of the certificate shall be deemed suspended during the evaluation of any of the required prior treatment as described in paragraph F of this case for the 2 or more violations 219-101 with the chapter of the person shall be ineligible to hold the certificate for a period of 5 years of refusal of providing a breath and fluid sample before testing under the requirements of statute 219 with the chapter been instructed to do so by the railroad representative shall be treated with the purpose of the ineligibility under the paragraph same manner as the violation of the section 219-102 with the chapter for this case the refusal provided the urine specimen and testing. B. Section 219-101 with the chapter of the case of the refusal to provide breath or example of the alcohol testing with the blood specimen mandatory post-accidental toxicological testing. Future eligibility to hold certificate following the alcohol drug violation. The following requirements apply with the person who has been denied certification and recertification suspended with the revoked as a conduct for the described in paragraph E of the section. The person shall not be eligible to grant reinstatement of the certificate unless until the person has 1. Been available to wait by the SAP substance abuse personnel to determine if the person currently has been active substance abuse disorder, successfully completed an program counseling and treatment, determined with the necessary SAP with the prior with the return of the evidence, served in accordance with the testing procedure with the subpart 8 with the part 219 with the chapter had alcohol testing with alcohol concentration less than 200 for the the representative of the urine sample tested negative with the control with the substance is said. 2. Conductor play for the service of return service under the above the stated conditions shall continue within program counseling the treatment with the team and the necessary for the SAP shall the subject of the regional program to follow up the alcohol drug testing without prior notice of the period of no more than 60 months following the return of the service. The follow up the test shall include no if not fewer than 6 alcohol tests and 6 drug tests during the first 12 months for the following return service. 3. A return service follow up the alcohol drug test shall be performed consistent with the requirements proposed by H with the Part 219. 4. This paragraph does not create the entitlement to utilize the service of the railroad, the SAP to forward the leave with the employment with the counseling with the treatment, not employ with the conductor does not, nor does it restrict any discretion available to the railroad taking the disciplinary action based on the conduct described herein. Confidentially protected, but nothing in this part shall affect the responsibility of the railroad with the 219-403 with the chapter of voluntary referral policy. The treatment of the voluntary referrals of the substance abuse counseling the treatment is a confidential certification staff of the conductor who is successfully assisted with under the procedure of this section shall not be adversely affected. However, the railroad shall include a voluntary referral with the policy regarding the issue pursuant to 219-403 of the chapter of the provision. That is believed with respect to certified conductor candidate with the certification policy with the confidential waive to extent that the railroad shall have received from the SAP of the DAC official note of the substance abuse disorder to suspend and revoke the certification as appropriate if the person at any time refused to cooperate with the recommended courses of the counseling of the treatment. Alright, 242.117. Vision and hearing acuity. Each of the railroad should adopt and comply with the program with requirements of this section named with the person, including but not limited to each of the railroad official, supervised, employee with violates any requirement of the program with comply with the requirements of this section of the person shall be considered the violation of the requirements of this section after the pertinent date of the statute 242.105 D and E with the railroad power the initial certification, recertification, preach purpose and everything of the class service shall determine that the person shall meet the standard of visual acuity, hearing acuity prescribed in this section. In order to make the determination of the required under paragraph B of this section, railroad shall have on the file either a medical examiner certificate individual has been medically examined to meet the acuity of the standards. Written documentation for the medical examiner documentation his or her personal and professional opinion of the person does not meet the one of both acuity standards, stating the basis of his or her determination of the person can nevertheless be certified under these certain conditions. To a person acuity in such that the person cannot safely perform as a conductor even with the conditions attached. An examination required for the compliance with the section shall be performed under the supervision of the medical examiner or licensed physician assistant, such as the licensed optometrist, technically responsible to that person may be perform the portion examination for pertaining to the visual acuity. The licensed, the certified audiologist, technical responsible for the performance may perform the portion of the examination pertaining to the hearing acuity. If the examination required on the section disclosed that the person with the need for the corrective lens for the hearing and the aid for the both, they able to either meet the threshold acuity level established in the section to meet the lower threshold, determined the railroad medical examiner sufficient to perform the conduct within fact there should be no certified issue with the accordance with the provision of this part. After any person such for the certificate notification for the relevant corrective device with the performance of the as the conductor and lift of the railroad medical examiner subsequently determines if the writing of the person can safely perform without use of the device. Alright, G. Fitness requirement. In order to be currently certified for the conductor, except for the paragraph J, with the section of the person's vision and hearing that shall be made meet and exceed the standard prescribed in section F of the appendix D for this part, recommended for the each of the tests conducted pursuant to the section should be performed in accordance with any of the directions supplied, manufactured in such tests of any of the American National Standard Institute or any ANSI standards for the applicable, except the provided paragraph J of this section. Each person shall have visual acuity with the means for the exceeds for the following threshold. For distant viewing, either the distant visual activity at least 20/40 Snell in each of the eye with corrective lenses. Alright, 2. The distance visual acuity separately corrected with the 20/40 Snell corrective lenses. Distance binocular activity with the 20/40 Snell in both eyes without corrective lenses. Field vision at least 70 degrees in the horizontal meridian of each eye. The ability to recognize and distinguish between the colors of the railroading signals demonstrates successful and full completion of one of the tests in appendix E of this part. Except for the provided paragraph J of the section, each of the person hearing test for the audiogram with the person with hearing the acuity with the meaning for the following threshold. If the person does not have the average hearing loss for the better air of the greater than 40 decibels without hearing aids for the 50 Hz, 1,000 Hz, and 2,000 Hz. Hearing test for the audiogram shall meet the requirements of one of the following required in statute 29 CFR 1910-95H. OSHA required in 227.11.1 of the chapter of the conducted use of the audiometer of the meets of the specification and are made with the used in accordance with the NSI S3.6 2004 specification audiometers. J. A person not meeting with the threshold of the paragraph of the H1I of this section shall be upon request subject to the further medical examiner to determine the person's ability to safely perform the conduction in accordance with the guidance described in paragraph D. This part, a person then top of the retest without making any of the showing another retesting person provided the evidence substantial with the circumstance that has been changed since the last test with the extent of the person could now safely perform a conduct with the railroad should provide with the medical examiner the copy of this part, including the appendices after all the consultation of the railroad office. The medical examiner concluded that despite the not meeting with the threshold of the paragraph of the H1 of the section, the person's ability to safely perform as a conductor, the person have the certified with the conductor certification the certification condition with the special restriction of the medical examiner determination in writing is to be necessary. Okay, as a condition maintaining certification, each certified conductor shall notify his or her employer of the railroad medical department if no such department exists for the appropriate railroad office official. If the person's best correctable vision or hearing is deteriorated extent that the person no longer meets with one or more of the prescribed vision, the hearing standards, or the requirements of this section, the notification required prior to any subsequent performance as a conductor. Alright, 242.111.9. Training. Each railroad shall adopt and comply with a program that meets with the requirements of this section with any of the person, including but not limited to each of the railroad office supervisor or employee with the violation of the requirements of the program will comply with the requirements of this section. The person shall be considered as viable with the person of the section and pertinent the day of the specified in 242.105D and each for the railroad prior to the initial insurance of the certification to any person as conductor shall determine the person as in accordance with the requirements of this section knowledgeable safely perform the conduct and each for the type of the services of the person will be permitted to make the form. In the making of the determination, railroad shall be the written documentation to show that the person can believe with the training program that complied with the paragraph D of the section. The person will demonstrate that his or her knowledge of achieving the passing of the grade under the testing evaluation procedure of the training program. 3. The person demonstrated that he or she is qualified for the physical characteristics of the railroad and pertaining segments of other which the person will be perform service. The railroad with elects to train previously untrained person to be the conductor shall develop an initial training program which is in the minimum will include the following. Determine how the training must be structured, developed, and delivered, including appropriate combination classroom, simulator, computer-based with correspondence on-the-job training, other formal training with the curriculum shall be designed and impair with the knowledge and ability to comply with the applicable federal railroad safety laws, regulation, orders as well any of the railroad rules to perceive the promulgated to implement those applicable railroad safety laws, regulations, order the training shall document the person's knowledge of the ability to comply with the federal railroad safety laws, regulations, and orders as well as the railroad rules and procedures. The on-job portion of the training program shall consist of the three key components. The brief statement of the describing the task and related to the step of the employee learning on the job shall be able to perform. Statement of the condition, prerequisites, tools, and equipment, documentation, briefing, and demonstration of the practices necessary for the learning of the transfer. 3. A statement of the standards with the proficiency measured through the combination task step with accuracy, completeness, and repetition. 3. Prior to the beginning of initial safety-related tasks associated with the on-the-job experience, exercise, the employer shall make any relevant information material such as the operating rules and the safety rules and the rules available to the employees involved with the referencing. The task-related and steps associated with the on-the-job exercise with a particular type of the conductor, so with the passenger conductor shall be maintained together with the on the manual with the checking and similar document with this reference shall be made available to all the employees involved on this job of the exercises. Alright, 5. When new safety-related laws, regulation, order, the technology, procedure, the equipment introduced, the working play for the railroad must review the training program and modify the training accordingly. The provider to previously untrained person of the certified as conductor of the railroad shall require the person to successfully complete the training for the formal training with the initial training with the program developed pursuant to paragraph D of the section and any associated examination covering skills, knowledge, and person will need to possess in order to perform the task necessary to be conductor, and 2. To demonstrate the satisfaction with the railroad input with the qualification of the qualified instructor on the job proficiency to successfully complete the task necessary with the conductor. However, the person may perform such task under the direct on-site supervision of the person who is necessary operating with experience as part of the on-the-job training process with completing the such training, passing with the field evaluation, demonstrate the knowledge of the physical characters and aim for the assigned territory, successfully complete the test created by the person qualified with the physical characters of the territory. After the railroad using the written notice of the purpose of the paragraph E3 of the section of the railroad must provide with the person being tested the opportunity to consult with the supervisor, employee who possesses the territory qualification of the territory to explain the question of the G. Person may acquire familiarity with the physical characteristics of the territory through the following methods. Method is used by the railroad for familiarizing with the conduct with the new territory while starting with the new railroad. The method used the railroad starting operates for the newly acquired railroad lines. Method used by the railroad for the reopening along used route B. H. Method in paragraph G of the section shall be described in the railroad conductor qualification program required on this part with the submitted in accordance with the procedure with the described in appendix B of this part. Appendix B of this part with the ownership of the railroad is being transferred from one company to another. The conductor is acquiring the company when they receive the familiarization of the training selling company with the acquiring railroad company and commencing operation. J. A railroad shall designate its program requirement in the section of the time period, but the conductor must be absent with the territorial yard, be qualified with the physical characteristics required. A person of the program shall include the procedure qualified with the qualify the person's physical characteristics. The railroad should provide with the continual education of the certified conductor to ensure that each of the conductor maintains the necessary knowledge with the concern of the railroad safety operating of the rules compliant with all applicable federal regulations, including but not limited to hazardous material, passenger train, emergency preparedness, and brake safety standards, and brake departure insurance and inspection procedure for the passengers, equipment safety standards, physical characteristics of the territory. Or 242, 121, knowledge test. Each railroad should adopt and comply with the program and each of the requirements of this section with aim of the person that includes but not limited to each of the railroad officer, supervisor, or employee that violates any of the requirements of the program which will comply with the requirements of this section that shall be considered with the violated requirements of this section if they pertain to the data of the date of the specified in statute 242, 105 D and E of the railroad prior to the initial certifying, recertifying of any person with any type of the service that shall determine that the person in accordance with the requirements of this section deemed to demonstrate with sufficient knowledge of the railroad rules and practice for the safe movement of the trains. C. In order to make the knowledgeable the determination required with the paragraph B of this section, the railroad shall have the procedure for the testing of the being of the evaluated certification of the conductor shall be designed to examine the person's knowledge of the railroad operating rules and practice for the safe movement of the trains, objective of the nature of administrative of the writing in the electronic form cover the following subjects: safety operating rules, timetable of instruction compliant with the applicable federal regulations. Physical characteristics of the territory on which a person will be and currently stay for serving as a conductor. Use of the job aid with the railroad may be provided with the conductor sufficient accurately measured for the person knowledge of the cover and the subject. Conduct without open reference to books and other materials except the degree of the person that is being tested on his or her ability to such reference to books and materials. The conduct of the test shall be documented, and the writing of the documentation shall contain sufficient information to identify the relevant facts relied on the evaluation purposes. E. If the purpose of the paragraph C of the section provides must provide with the person being tested with an opportunity to consult with a supervisor or employee who possesses the territorial qualification with the territory to explain a question. The documentation shall indicate whether the person passing or failed the test. If the person fails or passes the test, no railroad shall permit the required for the person functioning in conduct or to the person achieving the passing of during the agreed examination with the person's knowledge. All right, 242, 123, monitoring operational performance. Each railroad shall adopt and comply with the programs meet with the requirements of this section. Any of the person, including but not limited to each of the railroad officer, supervisor, employee of the violation, any of the requirements of the program will comply with the requirements of this section. If the person shall consider that has violated the requirements of this section, each railroad shall have the program to monitor the conductor, the certified conductor performing announced operating rule compliance. The program shall include the procedure to address the testing certified with the conductor is not available given an unannounced compliance with the testing in the calendar year pursuant to paragraph F of the section. The minimum of such process and procedures shall include the following requirement: test for the unannounced compliance with the test being conducted for 30 days in the return of the conductor's service. The railroad must retain written record of the indication of the day of whether the conductor stopped performing the service required. The certification pursuant to the part of the day of the conductor return of the performing the service of the required certification pursuant to the part of the day of the was unannounced compliance with the test was performed, except for the provided in paragraph F of this section. Each conductor shall be given at least one unannounced compliance test each for the calendar year of the railroad officer meets the requirements of statute 217.9. B1 of the chapter, the unannounced testing program. The test of those persons certified as conducted pursuant to statute 242-107B1 for compliance with one or more of the operational testing according with the provision 217.9 of this chapter, one more provision to 218.99 and 218.109 of this chapter. To test the person certified as the passenger conductor pursuant to statute 242-107B with the complying with the one of the operational testing according with this provision of 217.9 of this chapter for this person certified as a passenger conductor pursuant to 242-107B2 but does not require the compliance with the part 218 subpart F of this chapter under the emergency circumstances, the requirements of the annual unannounced test of the requirements of this part 218 subpart F that must be satisfied annual training. Each railroad program shall indicate the action the will take with the event with the finds the deficiency with the conductor performance the unannounced performance compliant with the test and administrative of the accordance with this section. Certified conductor who did not perform the service requirements requires certified pursuant to this department needed to be given an unannounced compliance. Testing, however, when the certified conductor returns the service of the required certification pursuant to the department, the certified conductor must be tested pursuant to the section within 30 days of his or her return. 242-125, certification and determination made with the other railroads. A railroad with the certification of the person and with the conductor may rely on the determination made with another railroad concerned with the person. The certification of the railroad's certification program should address how the railroad administrated the training of the previously uncertified conductor with the extent of the operating experience of the previously certified conductor who have their certification expired with the railroad certification program failed to display specifically how it will train previously certified conductors hired from another railroad. And the railroad shall require the new hired railroad conductor to hire a railroad entire training program. A railroad relying on another railroad's certification shall determine that prior certification is still valid in accordance with the provisions of statute 242-201 and 242-407. Prior certification where the same type of services or certification being issued under this section, a person has received training, physical characteristics of the new territory in accordance with the statute 242-119. The person has knowledge of commence demonstrating knowledgeable concern with the railroad's operating rules in accordance with the statute 242-121. All right, 242-127, reliance on qualification requirements of other countries. The Canadian railroad that is required to comply with the regulations of the railroad conduct for the joint operation for the Canadian railroad may certify that the person is eligible to provide the determination that the person employed with the Canadian railroad, the person meets or exceeds the qualification standards issued by the Transportation Canada such services. Subpart C, administration of the certification program. Part 242.